But this specific letter shook him more than the other hundreds of letters that he'd read. And as he opened this letter, all that was written on the piece of paper was, I'm on my way to the bridge now. If one person so much as says hello to me, I will turn back and come home.
You've come prepared.
For a change.
I like it. It's actually interesting how different, this time we're meeting is compared to the last time we met. Or in terms of on the podcast.
There's a ton of stuff that's taken place since the last time I saw you. A lot of life changes my side. And I think I've got a lot of good stuff to share today.
And we actually met last week. Unfortunately, there was no power, but it's fine because we sat for about an hour and a half. We just chatted. We just spoke. We spoke about so much, which obviously we're going to go into today. And it was actually really nice to be able to just talk about things that I didn't ever think I would talk to you about. I didn't even think I would be personally, as a person, even thinking about discussing. And the amount of growth that we've both gone through, for me, I would say it's probably like the last 3 months. Do you want to maybe explain your growth and your change in mindset from, I don't know, when do you think the biggest change started?
Well, just to take it back a little bit, I mean, I as most people know, I did magazine publishing for 16 years. I was entrenched in the bodybuilding and fitness industry for a very long time. Something that I absolutely love, I'm still passionate about. Obviously, from a media perspective, that side of things just isn't really relevant anymore. And I went through a sort of 3-year, call it, break where I sort of had to find myself again. I had to find out what I was passionate about, what I wanted to do going forward in life. And I did many, many things. I've always been a bit of a jack of all trades. I've never been scared to try different things. So I've done everything from social media management through to some digital work for clients. I even did bodyguarding in London, which was quite an experience. And it brought me onto a path of consciousness a couple of months ago, about 6 months ago, where with everything happening with COVID and everything going on in the world and seeing a lot of people end their lives and commit suicide, which really has a deep impact on me, especially when it's people that I know. I decided to venture a little bit more down the sort of psychology road. And as much as I'd love to study psychology, everything sort of came to me at the right time. I reached out to a friend of mine, Charlie Veyer, who's now my coach on the consciousness topic. And I reached out to him and said, look, I really want to help other people. I want to be able to make a difference. I find that one of my passions and one of my purposes is to help other people, and I get great satisfaction and reward from that. And I've always been able to have an impact on people just by talking to them and sort of helping them iron things out in their minds and get things straight and help people understand perspectives, things like that. And so I reached out to Charlie, and we started down this road of consciousness coaching. And at first I was very skeptical, like some of the words that these people were using and some of these phrases that they were using about, energy into the universe and having a clear sort of set of ideals in the present time and the future time and past, and how to deal with life in the present time. It was really a bit of a mindfuck for me. But I ventured down the road anyway. I'm not one to give up on things that I might feel a bit skeptical about in the beginning. And it's brought me to a point where I can say it's been one of the most enriching experiences of my life. So much so that I'm at the point now where I've developed my own training manual. I've set up my own company, and I'm about to start. I've actually started a week ago. I'm about to start teaching consciousness to people. And the elements of how it can change lives is simply amazing. Not a lot of people understand it, and that's to be expected. It's not something that every Tom, Dick and Harry on the corner is offering in some office park somewhere. But I'm at the point now where I'm ready to go explain it to people, and I've started coaching. So I'm really excited about the future and being able to have an impact on people's lives.
So someone comes to you and they say, Andrew, I want you to help me. I want you to coach me in consciousness. What exactly is that, and how, what's your, essentially someone comes to you like, what is your coaching about?
Okay, so basically, consciousness is a process. It's not something you just read out of a book. It's something that you have to practice every single day. And what it allows you to do is to really tap into your inner self from a conscious point of view. Our conscious mind consists of three parts. We have our conscious state, which is at the top. If you think of it like an iceberg that's submerged in water, only 5 to 10% of the iceberg actually sits out the top of the water. Now, that is the conscious state that we are currently in. We're using our eyes, we're using our ears, we're smelling, we're feeling temperature. That is consciousness, okay? But that is the conscious part of consciousness. Slightly below the water, where there's not as much light, is your preconscious. Now, your preconscious is like a gateway into your subconscious. And much happens the other way around, where the preconscious is also a gateway from your subconscious back to your conscious state. Now, below that, we've obviously got the majority of the iceberg, which is submerged underwater. And that's where all the memories and the beliefs and the principles and everything that we've experienced in life is based, much like a hard drive. Excuse me. And once you identify how thoughts move through the different levels of the mind and how you can manipulate different thoughts, beliefs, things like that, your future becomes brighter. And once you also learn to deal with your past, you end up with a better state moving forward. So everything happens within a conscious state. And that is what consciousness is. It's the ability to identify emotions at any given state or any given time, how to manipulate those emotions, how to deal with past experiences, how to deal with past traumas. That's consciousness. And once you learn how to harness that and manipulate it, you end up with a situation where you live a better life going forward.
And, obviously you said 6 months ago with Charlie, and have you seen, or obviously you have, but, what are the biggest changes in terms of, those, and understanding your own emotions? Because, last time we spoke, I don't know if you want to tell the people, like, obviously, and the people that know you might also know that more side of you, where you said, if, someone cut in front of you in traffic, you would be that person that go and chase them down and go like, kind of call them out. Whereas now it's kind of, what value is there in going and upsetting myself over something that is completely out of my control?
Well, basically, we are flooded with more than a million different inputs every day. Experiences, emotions, sensory overload. We're at a point in humanity, I think, where we are experiencing more input through social media, our everyday lives, than ever before. And it's a bit of an overload. So when, for instance, something happens in traffic and you end up starting to identify with anger, and I say identify with anger because a lot of people are on autopilot. Okay, they're not aware of their conscious state and they're not aware of their own consciousness. Now, what happens is if someone upsets you in traffic and you go into a fit of rage, how many people shortly after that experience question to themselves, why did I allow that to happen to me? People aren't asking themselves these questions. They're on autopilot. They're literally just letting life throw them curveballs, and then they're just responding according to how they've been programmed to respond. So now, through studying consciousness, I'll be in traffic and someone will cut in front of me, which doesn't bug me anymore. Nothing really upsets me as much as it used to do. Because now what I'm able to do is I'm able to look at myself as a conscious entity living inside a biological body. But when anger and emotions and things come in, I'm able to look at them from the sideline and say, whoa, I'm not angry. I'm experiencing or I'm identifying with anger. And I can let that emotion come and I can feel it, but I don't have to respond. So once you become in control of your emotions, you function better as a human being, and you don't let things control you. You control the outside world.
And that's also obviously links and is essentially directly linked to Stoicism. And, one of the biggest principles that I've had to learn from Stoicism is, what is not, don't fixate on what's not in your control. Don't allow what's not within your control to upset you. Don't allow, that person cutting in traffic or that taxi doing this or to upset you, or, to constantly be talking about how bad inflation is and constantly be talking about how fuel prices are, skyrocketing, and it's just going to upset you and make you negative. You need to look at, okay, well, I'm upset about this, or, these are my emotions towards this. What can I directly, change, or what can I do to maybe make or alleviate whatever frustration or pain, or whatever that is causing me, what's within my control. Essentially, even our bodies aren't even 100% in our control. Only our thoughts. Our thoughts are the only things within our control, because, I can't control getting sick or not. I can obviously do certain things to try to stay healthy, but at the end of the day, we're probably still going to get sick. It's not within my control. What's within my control is obviously my thoughts and, my consciousness, and allowing things to upset me or not upset me, because at the end of the day, if you aren't willing to, look at yourself, and I think that's the biggest thing is it has to be the death of the ego as well, because you have to look at yourself from an outside perspective, completely objectively, and say, I allowed myself to get angry in that situation. Why? I'm a flawed human being, and these are certain things that, led me to that getting upset or being, harmed in that situation. Because, I think we constantly react to things, and actually I want to go into that with you, based on those past experiences that we have in the subconscious. When you work with people, do you, I'm going around in a circle here, but when you work with people, working on that subconscious level, do you help them, unlock certain memories, or, help them become aware of certain unconscious things, subconscious things that, are making them react certain way to situations?
So one of the first things we teach with consciousness is that your life is a timeline. Okay. Let's say your timeline is this long. In the middle, we have the present moment, which is where you always want to be. And I'll tell you why you always want to be in the present moment in a minute. Worrying about the future creates anxiety. Okay. Thinking about the past creates depression. Okay. The past is gone. So if you can eradicate memories, or not eradicate, I mean change the way you think about certain memories, or the way you've dealt with trauma, and there are many ways to do that as well, then it pulls you back to the present moment, because anything that's undealt with in your past, in your subconscious, keeps popping up, and it keeps reminding you, hey buddy, I'm still here, you haven't dealt with this, you need to deal with it. Worrying about the future just creates massive anxiety, because we're worrying about things that haven't even happened yet.
And there's a million possibilities.
Possibilities. So the only place to be is in the middle at the present moment. Now, how do you stay in the present moment? Okay, well, every thought, every word, every action of your day needs to be something that you're conscious about. Within the consciousness training, okay, there's a scale of energy frequency, because that's all we are at the end of the day is energy. What you put out, what you receive, it's all energy. If I'm talking to you right now and I'm in a bad mood, okay, you're going to pick up on a bit of a dark energy from me, and you're probably not going to want to sit with me and talk to me, because that's not something that you have chosen to accept in your life, okay? But if I'm giving you a good energy and I'm motivated, I'm positive, you're going to want to sit with me, because I'm creating feel-good energy inside your mind, and you want to learn from me. You want to continue the conversation. You want to move forward and learn as much as you can from me. So it's very important that we remain on the scale of energy frequency at the at the highest point available. Why? Because when you're living at a high vibrational rate from an energy point of view, you're more open to business deals, you're more open to good friendships, good connections. Everything happens at a high frequency. But if you're currently living in a depressed state, you're automatically down the graph on a tapered frequency. So you're not letting much of what's happening in the world into your life. You're just sort of like becoming a bit of a hermit. You might be missing opportunities. You might be missing out on possible relationships, connections, networks that could broaden your career, your horizons, your future. If you're living in the future and you're worried about the future, same thing. You're living on a tapered version of the vibrational frequency. So the goal is always in consciousness to remain in the present moment. And you do everything that you can in the present moment, because that will decide the future. The decisions you make, the way you interact with people, your kindness, your empathy, your compassion for people, the connections that you have. Everything within the present moment will dictate how your future is going to pan out.
And essentially, you want in the present moment to be doing what you love and what makes you happy and what you're passionate about. And I think in today's society, people often, unfortunately, go a certain route because they are chasing, this idea of success and society's idea of success. And people will, work towards something that the world will see as being successful. And you've obviously done many different jobs. You've done many different forms of work, and some you've enjoyed. Some, obviously, it's impossible to have enjoyed everything. But, I think when you're most happy and when you're most, content with life is when you're doing something that, you feel like it's a passion, or you feel like, this is what I'm called to do. And essentially that goes back to, the energies. And, you can feel that what you love to do now and what you found yourself moving towards is, giving people and allowing people to feed off your energy and to feed off, your positive emotions and your happiness and your, constructive thought processes, and to hopefully help them do the same.
It's very important to do something that you enjoy doing. I mean, waking up every day and having to do things that you don't want to do is really debilitating to the human soul. It's hard to be, you're not functioning on a top sort of motivational level. You're not inspired to go and do that kind of work. A lot of people will say, yeah, but I need the job because it's, it pays the bills. And I'll say, that's fantastic, but see it as a stepping stone. It's not the be all and end all of your life. What are you doing in your spare time? Because in your spare time, are you sitting there just Netflixing your 3 hours away or playing games or whatever, which there's nothing wrong with that either, because I'm also a massive believer in we need to switch off from the world sometimes. And I mean, watching a movie, playing a game, or doing something else is a great way of switching off the world, helping you sort of reset and relax. But when it becomes an everyday thing and you're the guy who's crying about your job on a daily basis, but you're not spending your personal time looking within, finding out what am I actually passionate about, and then slowly start maybe putting together some kind of a plan on how you can action that into a career, make money from it, and eventually take your current job, shove it up your boss's bum and say, hey,
I'm out of here.
Thanks very much. I'm going to go live the dream, But a lot of people also don't know what they want to do. And there's nothing wrong with not knowing what you want to do.
I think as humans, I don't think anyone really, and maybe there's a select few that truly know what they want to do and will say, okay, this is the career path. And I don't think as humans we're supposed to, stay in one thing and do one thing for all eternity of your life. You don't, even if you absolutely love, because we're ever evolving, let's say I thoroughly enjoy, helping people create podcasts, and I thoroughly enjoy helping people build businesses. But I don't know who the person I'm going to be in 5 years. I can't say that this is my calling for the rest of my life, because you're ever evolving. Your ideologies change, your interests change. And I think as humans, we shouldn't be rooted in this idea that you have to do one thing for the rest of your life. Okay, cool. Got my accounting degree. Now I can be an accountant and I can work in a great firm and I can make my way up and own my own firm and get a great job and have, send my kids to a great school. Yes, obviously you want to provide for your family, but at the end of the day, if you're waking up and, complaining about having to go and do X, Y, and Z to put food on the table, I don't think you've reached, that self, you're not going to be happy, and also it's going to be passed down into how you maybe react to your children when you get home from work. It's going to how you're going to treat your wife, your husband, whoever it may be. If you are stuck in something and stuck in a certain way of doing things just because it's I just have to do it to make money, or I just have to do it because that's what society deems successful. You're not actually going to be happy. I mean, we all know that money doesn't buy happiness.
I can safely say that if I ever reach a ripe old age of 75, 80, 90 years old, whatever it might be, I will never have the regret of wishing that I'd done lots of things, because I've done lots of things. And for me, doing things is the only way to find out whether you like it or not. You can't just think about something and then say to yourself, well, yes, I'll definitely enjoy that. I mean, I thought I'd enjoy bodyguarding. Okay, and to a certain extent I did. But when I got to England, it was one of the shittest jobs I've ever done in my life. You work for people that are ungrateful. They spend a shitload of money on things that just are a complete waste of money. And then when it comes to paying you, it's just like it's an absolute nightmare to get your money out of people. So, the only way I was going to learn that was to put myself in the real world in that situation and go and find out whether I would enjoy it or not, and I didn't. And I've never been one to sit and do things that I don't like. I haven't been employed since I was early 20s. I mean, when I left architecture, which was my first chosen profession, I've worked for myself ever since, and I don't think I'll ever work for someone ever again. Well, I hope I don't. So the only way to find out what you really want to do, and like you say, don't put timelines to things. Things are always temporary. The world is changing. People are changing. Things change all the time. New opportunities are always popping up. So it's very important that you're in tune with those kind of things. But never set yourself one thing to do, because you might be missing out on opportunities that are being presented to you. And you're busy stuck doing that one thing. So I think it's important that you play around. And the more fun you have with it, the more you'll enjoy it, and the more you will enjoy the journey. Life is a journey, and finding out what you want to do and being passionate about something, it takes time. I can't sit here and tell you what the next thing that I'm going to do will be. One day it'll just come to me, or I'll start showing interest in something and it'll grab me, and I'll throw myself into it deeply, and then that might become my next thing. So I think people beat themselves up a lot by saying to themselves, I need to find out what I'm passionate about. Yes, you do, but don't pressure yourself, because the more stress and pressure you put on yourself to find that thing that you're passionate about, the more it's just not going to come.
And also, I mean, obviously, all children, let's say 16, 17, 18, experience that pressure of, I need to know what I'm going to do one day with my life. I need to know what degree am I going to study. And I think it's unfair to place that onto people. It's unfair for, parents to say, okay, well, and different cultures do it differently, but it's like, okay, no, my son's going to be a doctor. My daughter's going to be an accountant. Like, everybody's different. Just because you're an accountant doesn't mean that your daughter now is going to go and be an amazing accountant. Obviously different parenting styles are different, but, now working with your kids and obviously having this changed mindset, and, how are you with your daughters in terms of, allowing them to explore what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy? Because obviously in school, I mean, there's maths, you've got to take maths. You need to do that. And also I'd like to talk about your, thought process on the schooling system in general.
Well, to take it back to the sort of the parents and the upbringing, I mean, look, I've got a close family, but I'm definitely without a doubt the black sheep of the family. I mean, I was also pressured at a late stage in school that, okay, the time has come. You need to choose a career. Okay. You need to pick something. I mean, I think I had a couple of months to choose a specific career that I wanted to study because matric was ending and I was told, you need a future, you need to get a job, which is also a lie. Get a job. Yes, getting a job helps. It pays bills and that, but you don't have to get a job. If you're entrepreneurially minded, you can create something. When was the last time that was taught in school? So what did I do? I was good at technical drawing, woodwork at school. I love those subjects. I ended up choosing architecture, and I studied what was a 4-year course. I did it in 5 years. I spent 1 year playing pool in the canteen because I just didn't want to go to building science. And, so I got the degree. At first it was the diploma. Then I went on to do the degree, which was an extra year. And I went out into the corporate world and I did architecture for, I think it was about 7 or 8 years, until one day I've always been a very impulsive guy, which is both to my benefit and my detriment. And I decided, screw this place, I'm over it. I was at the one place for about 6 months. I had 2 directors stacking up work on my desk on both sides, and they were fighting over my head over whose work was more important. And while they were bickering above me, I just opened Microsoft Word and I said, here, tender my resignation, thanks very much. And I was gone in 2 weeks. And I started personal training. My dad said to me, how do you go from architecture to personal training? I said, it's very easy. I just did. Okay. I wasn't seeing it the old school way of, you're an architect, you should be making so much money. Now you're a personal trainer, how much money can you make off that? And after 2 months of personal training, I was making more than I was in a corporate architectural firm. So don't tell me, all these glorified jobs, doctors and vets and surgeons and all that they make a lot of money, but I can guarantee you there are some people who live far simpler lives that make a lot more money.
I think that's also it's with, you mentioned entrepreneurial spirit and, having that courage to just quit that corporate job. But, you can take anything if you got an entrepreneurial mind and make a success of it. In terms of success, I mean, you can grow it to a level where you be financially stable or even more than that. You can take look at the amount of personal trainers today that are earning double what doctors are earning. Look at the amount of personal trainers or the amount of, look at someone that's really successful in a podcast. All they do is sit down and talk to people every day and they're making millions. If you're truly passionate about something and you are enjoying what you do every day, it allows you to then still be a massive success in something that's relatively unconventional.
Look, the old adage of the list of occupations that make money is completely obsolete. I mean, you've got gamers making more than brain surgeons. You've got YouTubers and like you say, podcast hosts making more money than CEOs in massive corporate firms. I mean, times have changed, So I think if you're switched on to how the times are changing and you don't sort of shelter yourself from the world, I think you give yourself a bit more of an advantage as to what direction you might want to move in. But the old traditional way of growing up being told you've got to go to college, you've got to go to university, you've got to get an education and then get a job is a lie. It's an absolute lie. I mean, I'm not saying that means you need to sit on your ass and do nothing, but I'm just saying it's not the only way. And to get back to your question about my kids, which I've got a very funny story to tell you. So Sienna, my daughter now, is 11 years old, and probably about a year or two ago, she would come home every week with a fresh list of career choices. One of them was a magician. One of them was a rock star. One of them was a brain surgeon. And the other one was archaeologist. And then when I'd say to her, okay, babe, but how are you going to do all these jobs in one day? She said, no, well, I'll be a rock star on the weekends. And then I'll be like a brain surgeon during the day. And maybe at night in the weeks, I'll be a magician. But she had it all figured out. And I mean, who was I to tell her otherwise, And the one thing I do with my kids specifically, which I feel is very, very enriching for their lives is I never tell them that they cannot do something. Because to me, and I mean, I'm very lucky that I've got a very, very smart little girl. She's in the top 10 in her year academically. And she's not even applying herself. I mean, she is super, super smart. She's even street smart, you know, because I've taught her that. And I've never covered up my conversations to suit her age. My daughter has conversations with me at 11 that I would probably have had with my dad or my mom and dad when I was about 18, 19. So my daughter she knows I don't keep anything from her. I don't hide anything from her. And as much as it's accelerated her maturity, it has helped her sort of academically, and it's helped her see the world in a little bit more of a bigger way than I think the average kid her age sees. So when she comes home with a new religion, last week it was Buddhism, next week who knows what it might be, I'll just say to her, baby, it's your choice. Whatever you choose at the end of the day, I'll be happy with, because I would never force anything on her, be it religious, be it academic, be it career, be it sport. You know, she's found her way in archery. I mean, she's a great little archer, you know, and she wants to do that in the Olympics one day, and I hope she does. But I'll never, ever compress or squeeze her dreams, because I think that's where a lot of childhoods go wrong. And I think it creates a very, believe it or not, part of the consciousness course, limiting beliefs. You know, we all grow up with certain limiting beliefs. And the more we can eradicate those limiting beliefs at an early age, I think the better the kids will be going into the future.
I think that's a lot of schools to blame with that in terms of the term failure. And, you know, in life, you can never fail. And when you're in school and you get told you fail, sure. But when you're an adult and you tried a job and it didn't work out, you didn't fail. You can learn from it and you can move on and you can, you know, adapt and make changes and do things differently. You didn't fail. No, there's no such thing as failure. And in school, if you don't pass, you failed. And if you're not good at maths, you failed. I mean, I remember I was terrible at maths. I wouldn't even deny how bad I am at maths. But I failed. But then I didn't fail, because me doing badly at maths doesn't mean I should have maybe also applied myself more. But you can't, you should not say you failed, because then it just makes people not want to try something for the fear of failure.
I think it's a different story. Like if you're in school and you end up flunking a couple of your subjects, I mean, like the term failure is a bit more seated in concrete than life. I mean, when you go out into the world and you decide, I'm going to start a podcast company, okay? And then that first client comes in and you're amped and you're ready, and they sit here and they talk here for 2 hours and it's the most amazing podcast, and you forgot to switch the camera on.
It's happened.
You know? It's like things are going to happen. And it's how you let those circumstances define you at the end of the day that inevitably will either push you forward or make you give up.
But I think as a child, you need help with that, because you know, as an adult, we've dealt with many failures in our lives, so we know how to possibly handle certain failures. As a child, you get told, you know, you can't do maths, go to maths lit. You can't do science, go do this. You can't, you know, withhold a lot of information in your brain, rather go do this. And then it's what you're almost seen as a failure, because it's not saying, okay, you can't, well, it is essentially saying you can't do this. You know, let's just push it away and make you focus on something else.
I think it's a very detrimental part of the growing up process is, you know, depending on how hard your teachers are on you or your parents, if you end up with a thought of, I have failed when you're a kid, without realizing that failure is essential to succeed, then it becomes a sort of set-in mindset that anything you fail at is because you're either stupid or dumb, or you're just not smart enough, or you're just not getting it, or you've got learning disabilities, or, you know, whatever it might be. And that's completely the opposite to what it is. Maybe you're just not destined to do maths. Maybe you're not destined to do science, and that's fine. But obviously, I mean, if you've chosen those subjects in school, then, and you need to pass at the end of the year to get some kind of a education going forward, or you need to you want to go on to another institution where you're going to study on further, then I mean, you make changes.
But also, I think there are certain classes, and obviously you need, and that's the difficult thing about schools, because it is a pretty flawed system, but also it can't really be changed. There are maybe certain things that can be changed, like maybe, introducing classes of self-defense, especially in South Africa with the amount of rape and everything we have in our country. I remember in grade 8 or whatever it was, we learned line dancing and we learned to waltz, and we spent an entire month, every lesson a week, learning to waltz.
And now you use that every weekend.
Exactly. But I mean, why not maybe limit the amount of certain things and add in others? Do waltz dancing for 2 weeks, then do 2 weeks of self-defense. Then, in business, obviously there's a curriculum. So then maybe outside of that, maybe in life orientation or something, teach them about taxes, or teach, real applicable things that are in the real world.
Look, I'd say over the past couple of years, especially with COVID being around and the sort of, the depressive societal state that we sort of find ourselves in at the moment, I guess you could call me a little bit of a conspiracy theorist. And the problem I have with that is the school systems for me have become nothing but pure indoctrination. I mean, my honest feel is that if you have the time and you have the ability to homeschool children under curriculums that you can manage and also scrutinize, I think that could have a tremendous advantage on your child going forward. For instance, my girlfriend's daughter, Gemma, she came home to tell us about the Battle of the Blood River because that's what they'd learned. And somehow the stories changed since I was at school. It's almost like the bad guy became the good guy and the good guy became the bad guy. And we sort of, like Jen and I, kind of like looking at each other like, that's not what happened. And this is the stuff they're teaching the kids.
And you can't tell your kid different, essentially, because they have to write those answers on the test to pass. Correct.
But in the case of Sienna, now, Gemma, I wouldn't do that to because she would probably go write the exam and write what I said and obviously not pass. Sienna, on the other hand, is able to see different perspectives. So I would give her the perspective that I was taught at school and then say to her, but please understand, if you're going to write an exam on something like that, you're going to have to write about what it is they're teaching you, not what I'm telling you. So I always take situations with my kids and I give them multiple perspectives so they can draw their own conclusions. Because I refuse to have kids that go to school and just literally come home and sort of parrot fashion what they've been taught without thinking about whether or not that's the real situation or whether that's the real event that happened. Which is sad, but I mean, if you're able as a parent and you're smart enough and you know your history to be able to intercept certain ideals and maybe put a fresh spin on things that allows the child to see things from multiple angles, to me, that's the best way to go.
And, I came from a very sheltered school. And, I thought when I was my entire schooling career, I thought the world was one way. And maybe that's why also I'm more cynical about certain things, is because I came from such a sheltered environment. Then I went to University of Pretoria. Then obviously I was exposed to the entire world. And I think that also what led me to be more cynical was being so sheltered and so, this is what we do here, this is what we do. We don't really talk about those. We don't talk about that. So there's not that broad understanding of the world. It's kind of in our little bubble, our isolation. This is what we're going to do. Then you get out to the real world and then you bombarded with so many different ideologies, thought processes, situations. And it doesn't actually prepare you for the real world.
Correct. But I think the key secret is to be open to everything the real world throws at you so that you can filter in and out what you think is necessary or what is real versus what isn't. I mean, like nothing's going to train you like the real world does. So I guess the secret really is to, once you start leaving all these educational institutions and these higher learning facilities or whatever, and life starts throwing you a couple of curveballs, you can't deny what's being thrown at you. It's up to you to make out what's real and what isn't. I mean, at the end of the day, what is real, what is true, and if you are on the end of being the guy that simply receives information and then sort of takes that information and gives it to someone else and deems it as real and true, then you're not really consciously making your own decisions, or maybe doing a bit of research as to maybe that's true, maybe that's not, and then deriving your own conclusions.
But I think, and I've definitely been, guilty of that, and it came from school. It was, okay, well, this is what I've been told, so this must be absolute. Not questioning it, not doing anything, just regurgitating when I have to do it. And you're not really actually benefiting at all from hearing something and regurgitating. Because the moment instead where someone tells you something and you say, okay, I understand, but I want a better understanding. Then you go and do research, and then you see different schools of thought and different things, and then it might lead you to a greater understanding, maybe to improve on what they're saying or to contradict it. But it's that ability to, as you say, go and analyze something and say, why are they saying that? What's the motive behind it? Why, what can I, or what do I agree with? What don't I agree with? And it's that research that goes into that.
I think the past couple of years, and especially with COVID, have taught us that you can sit there and watch your television and be told how the world is and what the solutions are and what the problems are. Or you can listen to what they're telling you, and then you can sort of, maybe chat to a couple of your smarter friends. I've got a lot of smart friends that I talk to about sort of life and, circumstances that I might not really understand, and then derive your own conclusions, But unfortunately, it's been proven that for a lot of people, that's too much work. It's too much effort. It's going to take too much time. So they'd rather just be spoon-fed what the solutions are, what the up-and-coming problems might be, and then they just sort of look at their friends and say, oh, by the way, I saw on the news that this and this and this is about to happen, or this and this, But luckily, there are still some people in the world, and there's a lot of them, that are stay critical, and they rather figure things out for themselves than just be spoon-fed by propaganda in the media.
Going back to the study of the conscious mind and all of that, how much of it is rooted in Stoicism? Are there other philosophies and ideologies and everything that you have learned about and learned through and kind of reflected on and seen when you've implemented your life benefit from?
The thing about Stoicism, let's talk a bit about Stoicism. So the thing about Stoicism was, I obviously stumbled upon it, before I started my training with consciousness, and it's really motivational, and it gives you a lot of really good, solid principles that you can apply to your life. But then, when you come to consciousness and you start really getting deep into the human mind and what it's capable of, and especially with regards to belief systems, okay? Like I've got a paper here. Let's just read something. Okay, so what do Stoics believe? The Stoics believe that wealth, status, power, possession, or stature are neither good or bad, and they have no social importance with respect to our relationships with one another. That's also a principle of consciousness, okay? We are equals. They held that external differences such as rank and wealth are of no importance in social relationships. Okay, easy to understand. But then it talks a lot about good and bad and high morals and high principles and virtue and things like that. Now, where consciousness kind of throws a curveball there is, let's talk about good and bad. Two simple things, good and bad. What's good to me might not be good to you, and what's bad to you might not be bad to me. Why do you think it's good, or why do you think things are bad? Well, the answer is very simple. You've been brought up with, you've got experiences, and you've been brought up with parents and belief systems, whether they be religious, non-religious, which have told you that certain things are good and certain things are bad. Now, if you have me on the other end of the spectrum, where I've been brought up completely differently to you, how are you and I going to agree that good is good and bad is bad, or what is good and what is bad is bad? I might tell you, Jesse, look over there, that's bad. And you'll be like, I don't think it's that bad. I'll be saying, look at that, it's really good. And you'll be like, I think that's bad. I mean, it's like I'm just giving a small example of something here, but your belief systems, your principles, your upbringing determine how you view the outer world. So if something happens on the street, we go down the road and we see a car accident. It's not that bad. No one's died or anything like that. If someone had died, yes, maybe we'd both agree, okay, that's bad. But everyone's standing on the side of the road, the accident's quite hectic, and I'll be like, that's bad. And then you'll be, it's actually not that bad because, no one was hurt. So it's perspective. It's all about how you perceive things to be good or bad. So where Stoicism for me falls a little bit short is those varied, blurry lines between what is good and what is bad, because that's all something that will be personally interpreted by the individual.
And I think that's also where you kind of, I've tried to, look at it critically, because, like let's say Jordan Peterson, I'll be watching him, listening to him, and I find myself not actually concentrating with what he's saying and just taking it as fact, because of a lot of what he says is great. But then I hear some of him stuff and then I say, actually, no, I don't really agree with what you're saying here. And I think that's also maybe what you need to do that with almost everything. You need to consciously think about what you're being told, what you're reading. Okay, well, let me take principles of Stoicism that, I agree with from here. Let me take things from Taoism that I agree with here. And it's because you're your own person, you can formulate opinions on everything and structure them into your lives how you want. It's not like, no, I'm a Stoic, I can't be this. I'm a this, I can't be that. And I think that's also what consciousness is, completely, and it's for you. And how you become happier, how you become healthier, how you, what principles am I going to take that's going to benefit the people around me more? It's not, well, this is the principles of this, philosophies. I have to follow all of it.
I'm a massive Jordan Peterson fan. He's one of the people who I probably watch the most when I have a little bit of spare time and that. But most of his work with respect to the psychology behind human behavior, etc., a lot of it is scientific, a lot of it is habit formed, etc. But I do occasionally find myself sort of questioning certain things, especially when he talks about people in their personal lives and their marriages and their relationships, and the fact that you should never ever get divorced. And I'm not a believer in that. I'm a believer in individual happiness, and I'm a believer in finding solutions that work for both parties. Whereas he is of the firm opinion that, you never get divorced. And to me, that can have a lot of damaging effects in the long run. It can have a massive impact on the well-being of your children, because children are not stupid. They get to see their mom and dad interacting with each other all the time. And if there's no pure happiness there and there's no pure love between those two figures, the child realizes these things, and it starts to have a bit of an emotional dampening effect on them.
Absolutely, yeah.
So as much as I love Jordan Peterson and his work, there's always certain things that I find questionable. And then I ask myself, but why? Why? He's much smarter than I am. I love watching his stuff. He inspires the hell out of me. Why am I feeling like what he just said doesn't ring with me? And I think that at some point in his conversations, he's going to bring his own personal principles and beliefs in. There's nothing scientific about that. That is his own way of describing what people should be doing and what people shouldn't be doing. And I think when he does that and you don't really quite relate to that thing, then I think it's obviously information that you omit, you delete, you don't really worry about. But in general, I think his work's fantastic. I think he's one of the greatest minds of our time. And I think he's just a real guy, like he's so passionate about his work that you could be watching a podcast with him and he'll be so enthralled in conversation with someone, and the next minute he'll be so firm about something, and he'll make such a strong standpoint that his eyes will start welling up, and he gets emotional about it. And to me, that's real. Someone who sits there and just sort of talks scientific facts and doesn't really give that emotional impact to a conversation. To me, that's not someone who I'd follow, because for me, life is emotion. And I really think that when you're passionate about something and you show people that you're passionate about it, it comes through in your emotions. And that's the one thing I really appreciate about his work.
Well, you actually, and I want you to tell a story before we close, is, you told me a story last week and we were chatting about, and you did mention suicide and all of that in the beginning of the episode. I want you to tell them the story of, that guy, that pathologist, whatever he was.
He was a forensic investigator.
So
basically I watched a video the other day which really hit me hard. And being a complete empath and, having a lot of compassion for others, even strangers, it really hit me hard. And this video particularly was about suicide at the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. Now, they interviewed a forensic investigator who, in his time of doing that specific job, has researched over a couple of hundred, if not thousands, of suicide cases that have happened at the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. And when they interviewed him, they said to him, okay, you've been doing this for so many years, you've seen so many victims or dead bodies, you've seen so many people that have committed suicide. What is the most memorable case that you've ever had? And he sort of sat back and he thought for a while. He didn't take too long because he knew, but he just wanted to know how to bring it to the interviewer. And he said, there was a day that I woke up, it was just like any other day. And I got called to the bridge because there was a body. Now, my sole job, my responsibility is to make sure that there's no foul play within the suicide and that it was an actual suicide. So what he does is, much like any other day, once he finds the body, he usually finds, like he has 100 times before, he finds a wallet, he finds maybe a set of car keys, he finds some house keys, some ID. And much like he's done hundreds of times before, he ends up going back to the residence of the victim of the suicide, just to look for clues and things that would allow him to close the case as a 100% confirmed suicide case. So upon entering the residence of the unfortunate victim who had committed suicide, he, like 100 times before, found a letter on the dresser, like he has before. But this specific letter shook him more than the other hundreds of letters that he'd read. And as he opened this letter, all that was written on the piece of paper was, I'm on my way to the bridge now. If one person so much as says hello to me, I will turn back and come home. And that hit me like badly. Because, most people will probably say, I'm sorry, Mom, Dad, but, this is my final letter or whatever it was. And it got me thinking about so much stuff, that we deal with on a day-to-day basis within our lives. And just the impact that walking into a shopping center and maybe seeing a lady struggling with her trolley or something, or whatever it might be, that lady could literally be on her absolute last chance before she ends her life. And you going up to her and asking her maybe if she's okay, or opening a simple line of communication, or maybe just showing a little bit of compassion and asking her, is there anything you could help her with? Just being kind might have actually just given her just maybe that little bit more energy to go another day. So for me, I get emotional about this, but because it's something that costs people absolutely nothing, but people don't act on it on a daily basis.
Well, when you told me this, I think it was 2 weeks ago. Actually, it wasn't last week. It was the day before I was driving through to Hoedspruit. So obviously the story had impact on me. So I said, okay, well, going forward now, I want to try, implement these principles with every interaction that I have. Try to be as genuine, try to be as kind, take actual interest. And I was driving and, most of the time and you go through a toll gate, because I was on the way to Hoedspruit, you just kind of give them your card. Okay, cool, thanks, cheers. But now, I'll try to look at their name tag, look them in the eye, smile at them. And then you see these people actually have emotion, and they are actually smiling, and they actually do become more happy. And, I always, when I was doing it, I'd just be like, cool, thank you, slip please, whatever, and then bounce. And then, continue driving. And I always just think, these people are so rude. But at the end of the day, I can't, and you mentioned this, you can't expect to receive without giving. So I can't expect, this random lady, this random guy at the toll gate to, show emotion, be happy, smile when I'm not giving anything in return.
Can you imagine? Okay, you work at that toll gate and you see 3,000 people come through there every day. Now, every window that opens at your booth, can you imagine 3,000 times you look down and go, "Good day, sir. How are you? Are you having a lovely day?" And that's what everybody expects. But what nobody expects is that there's 2,999 people behind you. So I've got this thing that I do, and I make an absolute effort every day, whether I'm going into a petrol station or a shopping center or whoever I encounter. I'll walk up to them, especially the ladies, and I flirt with them a little bit. I say to them, "Hello, my darling, how are you?" And suddenly you've got their attention, because the other 15 people behind you didn't even greet them. And their job's just becoming, hand over product, hand over cash, hand over product, hand over cash. And eventually someone pitches up and goes, "Hi, my darling, how are you? How's your day going? I love your hair. Oh, that's a nice dress." And suddenly you've got someone's attention. And what are you going to get out of them for that? You're going to get kindness in return.
And I think you have to do it all the time, obviously, but especially in situations with people that are, lower paying jobs that are extremely difficult to do. I mean, I know personally, I will hate every single minute of packing a grocery bag because of the person I am. So, but if people are constantly being kind to me, constantly giving me those are nice shoes, nice shirt, whatever, it's going to make that job a lot easier, because most of these people doing these jobs, they don't want to obviously be doing these jobs, but they kind of just at a point where they have to. So if you can be that person just making their job a little bit easier, why not, when what they're doing is so difficult?
What does it cost you to show a little bit of gratitude for someone who's helping you? And I think that's something that has become a major, major problem in society. This sort of mentality that, they paid to do the job, so they must do the job. Okay, yeah, but you're not paying them. Okay, you're buying something, and they are just trying to make a living. So how about you just take 2 seconds of your day just to show a little bit of gratitude and maybe make their day? Because I can guarantee you 50 people behind you never said thank you. So it takes nothing to be kind.
And it can be a domino effect. I don't know if you've ever watched The Planet of the Apes with James Franco, where at the end of it, the sickness spreads, and then you see on the world map how, in America it starts, and then a flight goes there, and then this, essentially it's like what COVID happened. What happened with COVID, and you could look at it like that with positivity and happiness. You can be nice to that lady, then that lady packing the bag is going to be nice to the next client coming through. Then that client that lady was nice to is going to go into the car park and be nice to the car guard. Then the next person coming to the shop is going to be nice to the car guard, and the happiness can just spread and spread and spread. Positivity can spread, and I think we're just going to have a greater world around us if it just start. And essentially, it just starts with you.
Listen, if more of the world showed kindness and compassion, we wouldn't be in this situation we're in with the societal issues that we have at the moment. And what does it cost to show a little bit of kindness and compassion to people? It costs nothing. People are too busy wanting to receive. But unless you give the kindness, you give the love, you give the empathy, how's anyone going to give it back to you? And that's something I learned through consciousness. That there is no receiving without giving. So you spend your day giving, and I promise you it comes back to you 100-fold. And even if it doesn't come back to you, you've made someone else's day.
And you've made yourself happier actually in the process. You might not physically get something, but at the end of the day, that positivity that you showed towards that person still resonated with you in further acts that you were doing throughout the day.
We've become a society of lack, where we're all living in lack, and people have the mindset that happiness comes from receiving receiving a new car, receiving a new cell phone, laptop, whatever it might be. These are all materialistic things, but it couldn't be further from the truth. And I think we've strayed away a lot from our own human instincts because of materialistic things.
Yeah. Consumerism is a massive problem in our world. And, obviously it does also tie to, the jobs and pursuing dreams, because consumerism has become so, ingrained in us that, you just on a treadmill running after that check, boom, treadmill stops, you fall in the grave. And that's people's lives. It's constantly constantly chasing the next payday, and then you're just going to die, essentially.
When a lot of people talk about suicide, okay, yes, some people commit suicide because they've managed to get a lot of debt, and the debt's piling up and they can't pay the bills, and life has just become sort of unbearable in general. But the amount of people that I can count on my right hand that committed suicide during COVID, that had more than enough money, more than enough flash cars, more than enough nice houses, the material side has absolutely nothing to do with happiness. But the people that are not in those positions, or have those possessions, or have that wealth, keep telling themselves that when I acquire that wealth, when I get that house, and when I get that boat, that car, that jet ski, whatever it is, I'll be happier. And it couldn't be further from the truth.
That's why it boils down to, doing what makes you happy every single day, and doing what you feel is, something that you can wake up to and be extremely excited for to go and do. Because, if you think, no, it's fine, I'm just doing this job now so that I can make more money, move into a nicer house, get that car, and I'll be happier, you couldn't be further from the, correct.
100%.
Andrew, I want to say thank you, and I definitely think we need a part 2.
Thank you. It's been awesome. I'm glad to have been able to be here. Thank you.
And good luck with, obviously this coaching. I look forward to it. I think I'm going to need some help, because as transformed I feel from, these books and everything that I've read, I definitely think, as humans, and the environment is always changing around us, there's room for growth constantly.
Definitely.
Awesome. Thank you very much, bro.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.